Hi, my name is Vanula. I'm just going to do some bits of information and some music and stories around Valentine's Day, which is tomorrow. So the first Valentine's card was sent by a French nobleman, and he fought at the Battle of Agincourt, and he sent his sweetheart a beautiful card that he made when he was in prison. First of many millions that have been sent over the years. And then today on Radio 4, I heard that sometimes people sent vinegar Valentine's cards, where they sent cards to people telling them all the things they didn't like about them. That's very cruel, but I'd never heard of it. I think it was the Edwardians decided to stop engaging in that. And since then, one of the most expensive Valentine's presents I ever heard of, was when Aristotle Onassis sent Maria Caley a brooch that had diamonds and rubies and emeralds in it, and it came in a big box, and it was wrapped inside a full-length mink coat. And if you've seen the film about her life, she loved that mink coat, and she wore it till the end of her life. So I guess the coat lasted longer than the love in that case. So the search for love can go on all our lives, and sometimes we feel a love for our pets, or sometimes we feel a love for a country or for a river or for a particular mountain, or it doesn't always have to be about people. But I'm going to start off by playing The Joys of Love, which was a French love poem that was set to music in the 1700s. And then there was the next piece is Lag and Love, and it was written by Joseph Cumber in 1879 to 1904. And I thought I'd start with a happy love story. In fact, some of the love stories that you read about don't have happy endings, like Romeo and Juliet. And that was based on a Greek myth called Pyramus and Thesbe, which I'm not going to tell because it doesn't have a happy ending. But this one does. And long ago, in the time of the Greek kings and goddesses and gods, there was Venus, who looked after people's love life. And Venus was looking down, and there was a young man called Pygmalion. And Pygmalion, he just didn't like women. He felt he'd never find a woman he could trust. This is obviously what My Fair Lady was based on. I'm just thinking of it as I was saying it. So he decided to create his perfect woman. He was a sculptor, so he made her out of alabaster. And she was beautiful. She had beautiful eyes. She had the perfect little rosebud mouth, lovely hair that he created in sculpture. And he fell in love with this sculpture. And he would talk to her. And at night, he'd wrap her in a blanket before he went to bed. And in the morning he'd come down, and the first thing he did was take the blanket off and talk to her. Now Venus was looking down, and Venus thought, you know, I feel a bit sorry for this guy. I think I'll do him, I'll help him along. So the next morning he comes down, takes the blanket off, and puts his arms around the sculpture. And as he leaned in, he noticed that she started to feel warm. And then her lips got warm and they moved towards his face. And the next thing, she kissed him. And do you know, when he looked into her eyes, he fell deeply, truly, madly in love with her. And she came fully to life. She had long, long black hair, beautiful green eyes. And Venus looked down and thought they were very happy. And they were so happy that when they eventually got married, they invited Venus to the wedding. And they lived happily ever after. I thought that was a nice story, nice love story. So I'm trying to think of another story that has a happy ending. And this isn't an Irish story. It's a story that actually is based on the story from Skeleton Woman, from Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I'm telling it because I think it's a wonderful story about resilience and about how love can save, and about love rescuing. So in this story, a young girl committed a crime, and we don't know what it was, but it was so bad that her father took her to the side of the cliff and threw her over. And she fell down and down and into the water, and down and down. And she ended up lying in the bottom of the water in a cove. And the fish ate all her flesh and her eyes and everything. And as the years went by, her arms went up through her head and her legs went up through her ribs. And she was in a bad way. And fishermen didn't come to this cove anymore because they said it was haunted and by this girl. But one fisherman was out one day, and he hadn't caught any fish, and he was going home, and he was thinking, oh, this is a bad day, I have nothing for my tea, because in those days, of course, you couldn't go to the freezer and take it out, you had to go and catch it. And just as he was thinking of that, he managed to wander, his kayak took him into the cove, and he was thinking, I shouldn't go here, but I'm really hungry, so I will. And the next thing, there was a big pull on his line, and he thought, maybe it's a big salmon. Maybe I'm going to eat well tonight. And then it got heavier and heavier, and he thought, maybe it's a sea dragon. And just as he was trying to hold the fishing rod, he went flying backwards, and up comes the Skeleton Woman. And she was up in the air with her head lying this way, and an arm that way, and another arm up through there. Oh, she frightened the life out of him. He got so frightened. He got down, he pulled himself back up to the kayak, row, really fast to the shore. He got out of his kayak, and the problem was her tooth was attached to part of his clothing. So the more he ran, the further he ran, he couldn't get away from her. She was there. Every time he looked around, she was still following him, but he was so panicked he couldn't work out why. And eventually he came to his snow house, and he skidded into the snow house, and he thought, oh, the sweat was pouring off him, even though it was so cold and it was a snow house. And when he turned around, there behind him was the skeleton. And she was just looking like that, with her head like that, and one arm up here. And he realised that she wasn't going to do him any harm. And he lit the fire, and he looked at her, and he thought, what if that was somebody I knew? So he lay out some furs, and he took the Skeleton Woman and he rearranged her whole body so that everything was right. Her arm was down here, and her legs were down from her ribs and down where they should be. And then he wrapped her in the furs, and he got into bed in his own furs, the other side, and he went to sleep. But as he was sleeping, as often happens, a little tear escaped, and the Skeleton Woman was watching him, a bit like my dog watches me at night. And she leaned over, and she realised she was thirsty, and she drank and drank and drank at his tears. And the more she drank, the more alive she felt. And then with her skeleton hands, she reached in and she took his heart out. and she beat his heart. And as she beat his heart, she chanted, flesh, 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 eyes, 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 hair, hair, hair. And it was every beat, more of her body reappeared. And before long, she was lying there, complete, with long, long hair, sea blue eyes, her whole body. She was naked. She was complete. And she took the heart and she put it back into the man. And she sat back and she wasn't thirsty anymore. She had her flesh and she had her hair. And she looked at him. And the next thing she did, she reached her body into the furs and curled up beside him. And he kept her lovely and warm. And when he woke up the next morning, he found their bodies entwined, and he fell again instantly, madly, truly, deeply in love with her. And they went on and they were very happy. They had 7 children. They lived the fullest span of life, and they never were hungry because the fish from the sea fed them. And that showed me about how love can heal, how love can revive, and how wonderful love can be. That is the end of that story. Thank you.